Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Om Hri Om. Very good. Wonderful. Namaste, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here with us for this very special event that we're going to be having. There we go. Very good. Hopefully people can hear me now. I think I had it on the wrong setting, unfortunately. Very good. But again, hopefully now everyone can hear me. I don't know if people could initially, but that's all right. Again, I was saying welcome everyone. Thank you all so much for being here for this very special live stream event. And just to remind you, this is a weekly live stream satsanga that is presented to you by the International Sanatana Dharma Society. This is a movement that is a 24-year-old movement at this point. It was founded in 1998. And this movement is dedicated to restoring Dharma in this world in every way imaginable. Certainly spiritually / philosophically, but also in many other ways that other Vedic style movements don't even touch. And that means that we wish to restore Sanatana Dharma literally in every way. We wish to restore Sanatana Dharma in the realm of politics, science, culture, economics, etc., etc., etc. And that is what our movement is about. Our goal is indeed to restore Dharma to this world and to create a Vedic civilization. So that is the movement that is sponsoring what you are seeing right now. So again, what we are doing here is something that is very, very unique. Before I go on to the talk for today, just a few very quick things that I want to say. First of all, if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to this channel because, again, it's a very special channel. And in addition to our channel on here, we also have similar channels all throughout the internet. So we have a similar channel on BitChute, on Odyssey, on Rumble. We have video channels on there. If you look at the description, you'll see the URLs, you'll see the links to get to all of those other channels of the ISDS. Please subscribe if you can also to those channels as well. We're also on Telegram. We are also on Facebook, on Gab, on Twitter, and on and on. We're everywhere. For all of those links, please look in the description of this video toward the very bottom, and you'll see the links there. And please join all of those social media as well. That would be greatly appreciated. Please like this video if you can. That helps us with the algorithms so that this video will be suggested to others. And then finally, as far as this live stream, it's not too late. Please share the link with others if you can right now so that people can join us live. The video, of course, will be available afterwards in a recorded format, but it's nice when people can be here live and they have the opportunity to possibly ask questions. So again, please share the link to this video right now if you can on any social media that you're on. The last thing I'm going to say is our primary website, the primary website of the ISDS is dharmacentral.com. Please visit there when you have a chance. You'll see that we have many of our books available there. We have put out approximately 10 books. So those books are available there. In addition to the books, we have a beautiful mantra meditation album that is available as well. And you'll see much more information there also. So please visit dharmacentral.com when you have a chance. And last thing I'm going to say, we have a Discord server also that if they haven't done so already, I'm sure someone will put up the link to that. This is a Discord server, a forum essentially, that is dedicated to Sanatana Dharma, very specifically as taught by myself, not any other guru, but as taught by myself and the International Sanatana Dharma Society, i.e. Sanatana Dharma in its fully authentic, legitimate, and true and authorized form in accordance with the Vedic scriptures and previous acharyas. If that's what you're interested in, if you want to truly learn more about Sanatana Dharma in an authentic way, and that is in accordance with Parampara and Sampradaya, in other words, our lineage going back to the beginning of time, please join that Discord server, and you'll derive a lot of very good association there. So with that, let us now dive into what is going to be the talk for today. And this is going to be a somewhat special talk. It is going to be on the path of Manu, the progenitor of mankind. That is what the title of this talk is. And Manu is a very, very interesting person. Vaivasvata Manu, very specifically, because there are several individuals throughout history who are called Manu. And we're talking about one specifically, Vaivasvata Manu. And this individual is the Manu for our age. I'm not going to go into the entire cosmology and history of the Manus, etc., because that's information you can very easily look up, and that's not the point of today's talk. But let me just say, Manu is considered to be an extremely important person. He is an individual who is considered to be indeed the progenitor, that is the originator of mankind. He is the first human, one could say, and he is the forefather, the foremost ancestor of all true human beings. So that is who Manu is, and among many other things that he did, he wrote a very famous work, a beautiful work of literature, known as the Manava Dharma Shastra. That is the actual name of this work. Sometimes it's called Manusmriti, but the actual name is Manava Dharma Shastra. And the reason why this name is more important, Manava Dharma Shastra, is because this work of Manu's is considered to be one text, one work in what is in actuality a collection of works known as the Dharma Sastras. Now, the Dharma Shastras are a very interesting genre of Vedic literature, Vedic scripture. As I've explained before, when we talk about the Vedic scriptures, it's not like talking about, just to pick an example, the Quran, one book, one little, very little book. The entire Quran, I believe, is smaller than the New Testament. So, no, this is not what we're talking about when we talk about the Vedic literature. Rather, we're talking about many, many hundreds of sacred texts. So much so that they have to be divided into genres, types of literature. So there are the Sanghitas, there are the Brahmanas, there are the Aranyakas, there are the Upanishads, there are the Puranas, there are the Tantras, and the Agamas, and on and on and on like this, the Sanghitas. Well, one genre is known as Dharma Shastra. And Shastra means scripture, manual, scripture, etc. And Dharma is Dharma, so natural law. So in this genre of literature, there are several texts that are there. And of those texts, this one, the Manava Dharma Shastra, written by Manu, is one of the most important. And indeed, again, it's a long text. It's many, many chapters. It is a very beautiful text. It's a very profound text. It's a liberating text in which Manu speaks about many different concepts, both philosophical, but also religious, but also, interestingly, dealing with legality, dealing with law. And that is, let's say, the common thread among all the Dharma Shastras, is that they speak about Dharma, both philosophically, but then very practically as well, as far as law. But again, in all of these texts, there is also quite a bit on actual spirituality, sadhana, yoga, meditation, etc. And then Dharma, not just in the legalistic sense, but also in the grander philosophical sense as well. Again, you find this with all of the Dharma Shastra literature. So what we're going to be doing today is we can't look at the entire Manava Dharma Shastra because, again, it is enormous. It's an enormous work. And sadly, there are not good translations yet of this work. There are several very old ones, but it's difficult to find a good translation. But what we're going to be looking at are 3 of the verses from this important work, the Manava Dharma Shastra, that basically talk a little bit about what indeed is the path of Manu. That is, what it is that he recommends that an individual should do in order to achieve greatness, both in this world, but especially spiritually. What a person should do to achieve liberation. So this is our task for today, the path of Manu. So with that, let's look at these verses that I will be commenting on. The first one is Manava Dharma Shastra, and this is chapter 12, verse 83, and it proceeds in this way. Studying the Veda, practicing austerities, the acquisition of true knowledge, the subjugation of the organs, abstention from doing injury, and serving the Guru are the best means for attaining supreme bliss. So we will stop right here for now, and we're going to comment on this verse. And it's a very nice verse, it's a very beautiful verse, it's a very practical verse, and as you can see, it gives a map for us for what an individual should do in order to, as this ends, attain supreme bliss. In other words, to have liberation, to have enlightenment, to have whatever word you wish to give to what is the ultimate goal of true and authentic spirituality. So this is a very nice list of things that an individual should do. And for any of you who have been practicing Sanatana Dharma for some time, you recognize all of these. You see right here that, again, it's a map. And these are things that any serious individual who's following Sanatana Dharma, they're expected to do in order to make spiritual progress, to advance spiritually. But again, let's go through this a little bit. And starting with the very first clause, studying the Veda. Studying the Veda. Now, this is something that should be self-explanatory, but let's go into this a little bit. First of all, what is meant by Veda? Veda has several terms, several translations. The first of these is the literal translation of the Vedic scriptures. That is, again, those sacred works that form the very scriptural foundation of Sanatana Dharma. So these are the Vedic scriptures, several genres of which I mentioned just a few minutes ago. So for an individual to make spiritual progress, it begins with studying the Vedas. Why is this the case? This is the case because what is it that we are claiming that we wish to know, that we wish to achieve? We wish to achieve, indeed, the highest. We want to know God. We wish to know that which is the source of all reality. That being the case, where we derive that knowledge is a very, very important question. You know, just living in this world, there are so many ways in which we derive knowledge. We derive knowledge through the senses. We derive knowledge through reading a variety of works, magazines, newspapers. We today derive knowledge by going onto the internet or playing on our phone and thinking we're deriving knowledge. We can derive knowledge in a vast variety of different ways. But again, what is the actual highest subject that we are attempting to know? If we are attempting to know God, then we need to make sure that that knowledge which reveals God is knowledge that is not imperfect like all the knowledge of this world, derived from imperfect individuals, imperfect human beings, but rather, if we wish to have perfect knowledge, that knowledge must be derived from the perfect and through a perfect via medium. That is Veda. What Veda is not merely a scripture in the sectarian sense, but rather what Veda is the transmission of eternal truth in the form of sound vibration via enlightened beings that eventually makes its way into the form of what we call literature. That's Veda. That's Veda. That is the epistemological mechanism by which indeed we know anything that is truly eternal and true. So that is Veda. But now this comes to the second sense in which we have this word Veda. And that is Veda also means knowledge, but not knowledge, again, that is derived merely through the senses. not empirical knowledge, not even intellectual knowledge, but knowledge in its truest form, in its highest form, knowledge that is indeed of the nature of the eternal. That is what sometimes people would call wisdom, knowledge that is eternal knowledge. So this also is what the word Veda means. It means knowledge in this sense, and it also means scripture. In both senses, we are meant to study Veda. We are meant to indeed study the Vedic scriptures, and we are meant to also incorporate into our being that eternal knowledge that is found both there in the Vedic scriptures, but ultimately which has its source in that being who is the source of all knowledge, and that is God. So we are to study the Vedas. Now let's move on a little bit. Practicing austerities, tapasya, practicing austerities. Now, I'm not going to go very deeply into what are austerities right now because, as you probably saw, we have an entire verse speaking about austerities. But let me just say very, very briefly that the idea of purposefully practicing austerities, or sometimes what some people would call penances, is actually a concept that is extremely important in all legitimate ancient spirituality, Vedic spirituality, Buddhism, ancient European spirituality, etc., etc. And that is purposefully, consciously, of our own free will, taking upon ourselves hardships in order to have several different aims. So, for example, to make ourselves stronger, to give ourselves deeper knowledge and insight into transcendental subject matters, etc., to rid ourselves of sin, of bad karma, and on like this. There are many reasons for practicing austerities, tapasya. But again, I'm not going to go deeply into this because a little bit later we're going to be talking about that much more in depth. So the next, the acquisition of true knowledge. Again, we have a verse a little bit later on that we're going to look at that goes very deeply into this. So we're not going to go very deeply, but this is important. So I'm going to just talk about this very, very briefly again. The acquisition of true knowledge. So again, via studying the Veda, but also this is a more general statement. We are to acquire true knowledge. That is knowledge of that which is of importance. Not what is the gossip on the latest celebrity, what is this politician stealing today, and on and on. We're not talking about this sort of knowledge. We're not talking about merely factual knowledge that comes and goes and that ultimately is trivial, however important it may seem to us at that time. No, by true knowledge, what we're talking about is, again, knowledge of God, knowledge of our true self, knowledge of what is the true nature of reality, how do we achieve liberation, etc., etc., etc. Knowledge of those things which truly, ultimately matter in our lives if we are to attain supreme bliss. So that is what is being spoken of here. And again, later we'll go deeper into what is meant by true knowledge. Let's go on to the next clause. The subjugation of the organs. Now, this is a very interesting one. We know that we have the organs. We know that what is meant by the organs are, first of all, the senses, but again, those organs by which we affect the world around us, very generally speaking. Well, what it means to be a yogi is that we are meant to be in full control over our senses, over everything that we do, really more so than even just the organs, everything that we think, everything that we say, everything that we do. We are meant to be masters of ourselves. Now, of course, for the vast majority of human beings, sadly, that's not really the case. To greater or lesser degrees, it is indeed the case that individuals are not masters of themselves, but rather than using these tools, that is the eyes, the ears, sensation, etc., rather than using these tools precisely as tools to accomplish things of value and importance in the world, what do most people do? Most people will simply try to enjoy these trivial senses. And in a selfish sort of way, in a hedonistic sort of way, becoming enamored by the tool rather than using the tool for what the tool was designed for. This is what the majority of individuals, unfortunately, do, again, to greater or lesser degrees. Some people are radical hedonists, and that's all they do. That's what they live for. Some people do it to a lesser degree, but still, they give in to temptation and again, become slaves of their tools rather than masters of their tools. Well, what is one of the definitions of indeed what it means to be a yogi? What it means to be a yogi is that a yogi masters all of his tools. It means that you master the senses. It means that you master all of the abilities of action. It means you master your speech. It means that you master your mind, and you use the mind as a tool. You're not used by the mind to simply fantasize, and you become a slave of those fantasies. Rather, fantasies are banished, and the mind becomes your sharp tool, like a sharp sword, such that you can use that mind and that intellect to discern what is and what is not, what is true and what is a lie. That's how we are meant to use the mind. And indeed, this is one of the greatest goals of the yogi, is to have that mastery over mind, over intellect, etc., etc. So, subjugation of the organs, something that is, again, one of the most important aspects of what it means to be a yogi, a spiritual practitioner, a real spiritual practitioner. Let's go on. Abstention from doing injury. Now, this is an important one. This is something that you hear again and again. It is there in the yamas and niyamas of the Yoga Sutras. It is something that you find mentioned again and again in many of the Vedic scriptures. That is the idea of ahimsa, or nonviolence, abstention from doing injury. Now, I've said this many times, but it bears repeating because, unfortunately, it almost doesn't matter how many times it's repeated. It seems that people, unfortunately, are always going to misunderstand what is meant by ahimsa, or nonviolence, or minimization of violence. And unfortunately, as nice as a person as I'm sure he was in real life, if you got to hang out with him, Gandhi, probably more than anyone, Mahatma Gandhi, Mohandas Gandhi, probably is the individual who more than any other human being is responsible for absolutely perverting the concept of ahimsa and denigrating it to the practice of pacifism, of absolute pacifism. We are not Gandhians in any way whatsoever. Gandhi did not understand ahimsa. We are not pacifists in any way whatsoever. And the idea that we are flies in the face of the totality of the history and literature of Sanatana Dharma. On the contrary, as I've said, and as is provable so easily and so quickly, it is mind-boggling. Sanatana Dharma, if anything, is a warrior culture. We don't believe in pacifism. We do, however, believe in being dignified, in being civilized, and in being noble and virtuous. That being the case, we are not individuals who go out of our way to seek conflict, to seek violence in any way whatsoever. At the same time, as is the case for any people who are in any way intelligent and who have an IQ above 10, if you are attacked, you defend yourself by any means necessary. This is also indeed the teaching of Sanatana Dharma. What is meant by the abstention from doing injury is that indeed, if you are an individual who very specifically is on the spiritual path with the goal of knowing God, that being the case, you wish to live a life that is as sattvic as possible, that is as good, as peaceful, as pure, as positive as is possible. That being the case, of course you seek a life of peace. Of course you seek a life in which you're not going to go out of your way to cause injury to other beings around you, regardless of who they are, whether it's other human beings or animals, etc. This, for example, is why followers of Sanatana Dharma are strict vegetarians. We do not eat meat, fish, or eggs. We're not vegans in any way. Veganism is alien to Sanatana Dharma. Veganism is a fad of the last roughly 25 years. We are not vegan, and on the contrary, neither do we eat meat, because we don't believe in violence. We don't believe in killing animals when we can get all the nutrients that we need from vegetarian sources. So indeed, we believe in non-violence, in that we try to live as peaceful a life as possible, but at the same time, we're not pacifists in any way whatsoever. Indeed, there has always been a sector, a very important sector of Vedic society that studied the martial arts, that studied hand-to-hand combat, that studied weaponry of every description imaginable. That has always been a very important element of Sanatana Dharma. So when it comes to defense, indeed, we believe in defense. We just don't believe in harming the innocent. So thus, that is ahimsa. Now let's go on. And serving the guru. This is the very last practice that is of great importance. And serving the guru. Now it's very interesting how, there are hundreds of verses throughout the Vedic scripture that talk about the importance of guru. Learning from the guru, how to approach the guru, how to have humility before the guru. There are also verses that talk about the disciple, what the disciple should be like before they even approach the guru, the humility that they should have, etc., etc. And it's interesting how many of these verses talk about the importance of taking instruction from the guru, which is indeed something that's very, very important. But it's interesting how in this verse, very specifically, it doesn't merely talk about taking instruction from the guru, which is a given, which is understood, but rather it says serving the guru. Now, for those individuals who are very sadly lacking knowledge in Vedic etiquette, this may sound like a very strange thing. What does it mean to serve the guru? What does this mean? That an individual is meant to slave away for this person who claims that they know God? No, of course not. That's not what this is talking about. Rather, the way that we approach the guru, and first of all, what is the guru? Ideally speaking. Ideally speaking, the guru is not merely what many individuals today who call themselves gurus, but who in actuality are not. That's not what this word is pointing to. It's not pointing to someone who is a guru as a career, or to make money, or for fame, or self-aggrandizement, etc. No, we're talking about the real thing, a legitimate guru, an individual who has been on the path for a very long time, has studied the Vedic scriptures extensively. Let me make this clear. Any person who has set themselves up as a guru and calls themselves a sadguru, but they will admit they have never studied any of the Vedic scriptures, that individual is 100% a fraud. A true guru has studied the Vedic scriptures and not read the Bhagavad Gita once. No. That means they have studied most, if not all, of the Vedic scriptures and understood the full and authentic purport of those scriptures. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about a guru, someone who has been on the path practicing for a long time, not just playing on the internet, listening to videos themselves, and now they're a guru. No, they have been practicing. They have studied all the Vedic scriptures. They have had their own profound realization, both of true self and of God, of the divine, and more. They have the ability through Shaktida, through empowerment, to empower their disciples, to themselves become great leaders of the future. That's a guru. So thus, with that understanding and serving the guru, what is meant by this is you find such a person, you find a person like I just described, and you do what I did. You fall at their feet and you say, "Sir, I know you can quote unquote teach me. Before you even teach me, I simply wish to serve you out of humility." Simply by being in the presence of such a guru. What to speak of, yes, of course, you can ask them all sorts of questions. Of course, you can get instruction. But with a true guru, simply being in their presence alone, you can grow spiritually. That was my experience with my gurus. So, serving the guru. So all of these, this list that was just given, are the best means for attaining supreme bliss. And this is just an aside, because I know that I'm speaking to denizens of modernity. This is important. How does this end? Are the best means for gaining mystic powers and tricks? No. Are the best means for just knowing yourself really well, so that you can know yourself so well that it's easier to manipulate other people around you? No. And on, you see where I'm leading with this. there are many people who will approach spirituality even for the wrong reasons. And that's why this verse makes it very clear. No, none of these lower reasons, none of these animalistic reasons, none of these reasons that ultimately, if you call yourself a spiritual person, but your motivation is something low like this. No, not for those reasons. But these are the best means for attaining supreme bliss, i.e., liberation. True spiritual liberation, that is enlightenment, truly knowing who you are in a direct and unadulterated and fearless way, knowing who you are, not being afraid to face the good and the bad that is there, to eliminate the bad and to embrace the good of your own true Atman, your own true self, and then more, to take that true self that you now know you are and that you have quote-unquote discovered, and to take that true self and, like a beautiful lotus flower, place it at the feet of Bhagavan. In other words, to have God consciousness. This is what is meant by attaining supreme bliss. For indeed, to do these two spiritual motions, to have self-realization and God consciousness, to surrender ourselves at the feet of Bhagavan Sriman Narayana with devotion and with love, that is the supreme bliss, that is the greatest supreme bliss that we could ever hope to attain. So this is the path of Manu. Very nice. So now we're going to go through two more verses. We're not going to spend as much time with these next two verses because, again, they're mentioned in this list that we just went through. And it was this list especially that took a long time. But now we're going to go a little faster and quickly just go through these verses. So the next verse that we're going to look at is, again, Manava Dharma Shastra. And this now is chapter 11, verse 238. And the verse proceeds thusly. Whatever is hard to be traversed, whatever is hard to be attained, whatever is hard to be reached, whatever is hard to be performed, all this may be accomplished by tapasya, austerities, for austerity possesses a power which is difficult to surpass. Very, very powerful verse talking about what is the nature of tapasya, or austerities, penances. And now we'll talk a little bit deeper about this because this is a very important topic that I have certainly touched upon many, many, many times, but haven't really focused on. And it's nice to have a verse from Manu that focuses really on the idea, the concept of tapasya, or austerities. So let's talk about this a little bit. First of all, very generally speaking, as I mentioned before, but it bears repeating again now that we're looking at this in depth, the concept of tapasya is a very positive one. Sometimes people will have the idea that what tapasya or austerities means is doing penances to such a radical degree to the point where you're injuring yourself. You know, you'll fast for 40 days and you'll do that every 40 days. You'll do just truly crazy things, you know, that will really harm your body, etc., etc. And while historically there have indeed been a tiny number of yogis who have done such things, and usually when they do such things for a very specific reason to prepare themselves for something, the vast majority of individuals who are on the spiritual path are meant to practice austerities in rather a healthy way, a very healthy way, and a very positive sort of way. And the idea of this is essentially this, that it is via austerities, it is via the path that is more difficult, the path that is harder, that we become better in every way, that we become stronger, that we become more wise, that we become individuals who are, as I was saying previously, more in control of ourselves, that we rid ourselves of bad karma to at least a significant enough degree that we now have more freedom in this world, as far as our reach in what we can do, what we can aspire for, etc. So there are many positive reasons for engaging in austerities. And the truth of the matter is, this is what our mindset should be, that yes, I'm going to do austerities in such a way as to benefit myself. Indeed, austerities done the right way, even physically, even health-wise, can actually be quite good. So I mentioned extreme fasting for 40 days. No, that's something most people absolutely should avoid. You know, there are a tiny number of people who should do such things. But fasting in general, for a day, for a weekend, is actually a very healthy thing. I'm someone who throughout my life, I've done many, many different sorts of fasts. I've done fasts on fruit juice. I've done fasts on pure water. The longest I fasted for, having quite literally nothing but water, not even juice, not even a little bit of lemon juice dropped into the water, just pure water, was about 12 days. And that was in the 80s that occurred, where I fasted for 12 days straight, no food or anything like this. And the truth of the matter is, that was an austerity. Indeed, it made me stronger. Indeed, it burnt up, anything, any doubts, any fears that I had and what my mission was to be in the future, etc. But at the same time, such a fast done intelligently, done under the supervision of either a doctor or especially an Ayurvedic practitioner, someone who truly knows what they're doing, can be something that even health-wise is very, very beneficial. So this is the idea, is that when we have a choice of taking the route that is easier but that will through which we will derive zero benefit, or taking a path that is harder, but as a result will be stronger having traversed that path, we choose the path that is harder. So let's just go through this again. Whatever is hard to be traversed, so in other words, again, whatever is that path that is a little bit harder, but the reward will be great. Whatever is hard to be attained. Now, this is a very important one. This is a very interesting one. What is hard to be attained? Well, things of importance. What is hard to be attained? Well, anything important. If it's not hard to attain, it's not worth traversing the path to attempt to attain it. Things that are free, things that are easy to get are, what's that saying? You get what you pay for. Well, you also get, what it is that you decided to sacrifice for. If you sacrifice nothing, well, what you'll get will be next to nothing. If you have to sacrifice a lot to attain a certain goal, most likely it's something of importance. And of course, what are the examples? You want to get a PhD, you want to go to medical school, you want to become wealthy, you want to know God. Should not knowing God be seen as something of infinitely greater value than getting a PhD or an MD or just becoming rich or famous, etc.? Well, if you're a spiritual person, you know the answer to that. And yet, sadly, too many of us think that, yes, we know, you have to kill yourself to get a PhD, to go through medical school, etc. But knowing God, yes, just wishful thinking, and that's it. Say a mantra or two, and I'll know God. No, we understand that to know God is the greatest thing that an individual can attempt to attain. That being the case, yes, indeed, it is a hard path. Yes, I'm one of the few spiritual teachers who will tell you the truth about this. Is it a joyful path? Yes. Is it a path that indeed leads to supreme bliss? Yes. But is it an easy path? No, because what you are seeking to attain is the highest. That being the case, it is a path that you must dedicate yourself to. Thus, even the path is itself an austerity. There you go. Whatever is hard to be reached, whatever is hard to be performed, etc., all this may be accomplished by austerities. For austerity possesses a power which is difficult to surpass. So thus, Manu here is giving us a very clear indication that austerity is something that is powerful. And it is indeed. When you choose the path that is more difficult, that is harder, that is sometimes almost like walking through fire, but the result of which will be that you will be a better person on the other side of that fire. This is powerful. Choose that path of austerities and practice it wisely under the tutelage of a guru. And then finally, let's look at this last verse from Manava Dharma Shastra. This is chapter 11, verse 246, and it proceeds thusly. As a fire in one moment consumes with its bright flame the fuel that has been placed on it, even so he who knows the Veda destroys all guilt by the fire of knowledge. Wonderful, beautiful verse, actually. This is a beautiful verse, so much so that I would say even after the live stream is over, come back to this verse, read it again, even several times, and contemplate what this verse is saying and how beautiful it is. So this verse is, of course, talking about the nature of true knowledge. Again, wisdom, the sort of Veda. Veda meaning, again, this true knowledge. That is knowledge that is salvific in power. The sort of knowledge that is dealing with the eternal, etc. So what this verse is saying essentially is that he who knows the Veda, that is, that individual who studies the Vedic scriptures, that individual who studies the 4 Veda Sanghitas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavata Purana, Vishnu Purana, the Sutra literature, the Yoga Sutras, Narada Bhakti Sutras, Brahma Sutras, who studies the Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayana, etc., etc. That individual who studies the Vedic scriptures, what happens to that person is that they derive a knowledge that ends up being a knowledge that is almost of the nature of fire. And a good fire, a fire in which all that which has kept us in bondage, all of the guilt, all of the sin, all of the bad karma, all of the ignorance, all of the illusion, all of the false ego, the ahankara, the false ego, the artificial sense of identity, etc. This is all burnt away when we study the Veda and when we attain that wisdom within that comes as a result of studying the Veda. When we have this divine knowledge, what happens is we rid ourselves of all what are called anarthas, all of those faults, all of those sins, etc., that we have within us in such a way that what is left is indeed the true us. Everything else having burnt away, revealing what is left, and that is ourselves as Atman, now ready to surrender at the feet of Bhagavan, of God. So thus, again, it comes back to the Vedas. This begins with the Vedas, these 3 verses, and it ends with Veda. We are to surrender to Veda, and we are to learn Veda by surrendering to Guru. And in this way, by studying Veda as literature, we come to the point of realizing Veda as eternal wisdom, eternal knowledge. And in this way, we attain supreme bliss. Very good. So with that, I thank you for listening to my discourse on the path of Manu and these 3 verses from Manava Dharma Shastra. And with that, we have a little bit of time. And let's see then if there are any questions. So I will signal to everyone. Now is the time. If you have any questions very specifically on anything that we spoke of or anything related to Sanatana Dharma, we are open to all sincere questions. So I'll give you a few moments because I know there's a little bit of a time delay. Very good. Good. Here's a very nice question actually, and this is from Alex, and the question is, Namaste Sri Acharya. What are the requirements a person must meet in order to study the 4 Vedas, and why do so many dharmic leaders seem to discourage people from studying them? This is a very good question actually, and let me certainly answer this in a systematic sort of way. First of all, as far as what are the requirements for a person to study the Veda, well, there are several things to be said about that. Technically speaking, a person must be dvija, a person must be twice born. That is, an individual must go through what is called Upanayana ceremony in order to officially begin to study the Vedas. What this means is that a person receives a sacred thread. This has been the standard for thousands upon thousands of years. So in other words, a person has to receive initiation in order to study the Vedas properly. So this is something that is quite important. There are other requirements too, but this is the most important because truthfully, once you have achieved this requirement, you've also achieved many of the other sub-requirements as well. So this is the main one to be spoken of. An individual has to be initiated in order to formally study the Vedic scriptures. That being the case, what it means to be initiated is that indeed you must be initiated by a guru. Again, as the very first of these verses was speaking about that we looked at, you have to have a guru who is an authentic guru, who is a legitimate guru, who can guide you in the study of the Vedas. Now, when we speak about the Vedas, you indeed mention the four Vedas. That is what are commonly called the four Veda Sanghitas, these four very specific books. And in actuality, when the word Veda is used, sometimes it is used in that context when you look at a specific scripture or another. But also, generally speaking, when the word Veda is used, it's not referring only to the actual four Veda Sanghitas, but rather, even the Bhagavad Gita is considered to be Vedic, even Mahabharata. Indeed, there are verses actually that explain that Mahabharata and the Puranas, etc., are considered to be the fifth Veda. There are verses that confirm this. So when we say Veda, we're talking about the totality of the Vedic scriptures. So in order to study any of these Vedic scriptures and to truly study them, again, not just kind of read them in your spare time and hope that you're understanding, but to truly gain a very deep and meaningful and profound and useful understanding of the Vedic scriptures, you need to be initiated by a guru. So that's the first requirement. And then you ask, why do so many dharmic leaders seem to discourage people from studying the Vedas? And in this case, you're talking about the four Vedas. Well, you're kind of answering your own question there. Are they actually legitimate Vedic leaders and dharmic leaders if they are discouraging you from studying your own scriptures? I mean, it's kind of common sense. It's kind of like if you're a Christian, you're a pastor saying, whatever you do, don't study the Bible. Is that person really a good pastor, or is there something very bizarre going on there? Well, it's the same thing. That's funny. All right. It's kind of the same principle. If you have a so-called guru and the person is telling you, oh, yes, we're following the Vedic tradition. However, whatever you do, don't study the Vedas. That's a person who most likely you are meant to get away from and go to someone who will encourage you to study the Vedic scriptures. So as people see every week with these live streams and with everything that we do, we base everything, actually, that is we, myself and the International Sanatana Dharma Society, we base everything actually upon the study of the Vedic scriptures. And we don't discourage people, we encourage people. Indeed, we wish that more people took study of the Vedic scriptures seriously. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. Very good. All right, this is all right, I'm going to answer this question. This is from Galactic Black Light Cognate, and it is Sri Acharyaji. What is the original meaning of the term Vamachara, that is left hand path, as opposed to its Satanist adoption in the West to mean ego worship? Is the Eastern left-hand path a legitimate path to moksha? Very good. Very nice. One is and let's say Eastern flavored, one is a Western flavored version of Satanism. Left-hand path, so-called Vamachara, whatever you wish to call it, is the Satanism, one could say, of Hinduism. I don't even want to say the Satanism of Sanatana Dharma, because there's nothing dark or black or evil about Sanatana Dharma. Left-hand path has nothing to do with anything Vedic. All throughout the history of Sanatana Dharma, all of the true authorities of Sanatana Dharma, all of the acharyas, all of the rishis, etc., have rejected this path. The so-called left-hand path, whether it's practiced in Western terms or so-called Eastern terms, is a path for losers and for individuals who are small-minded, self-centered, narcissistic sociopaths, and it does not lead to anything even approximating moksha or liberation. If you wish to truly know yourself, and if you truly wish to know God and truth, follow the more intelligent, philosophically more intelligent path, and the harder path. And that is Sanatana Dharma in its sattvic form. Again, the harder path in the context of what we were just saying a short time ago with this verse on austerity. You get what you pay for. If you want to follow a lesser path, you can feel free, but you will go nowhere. You'll simply be reincarnated in an interesting form. Very nice. Varasaga. What does Lord Manu look like? Varasaga, I'm going to answer this for you. You can imagine. That's the only answer I'm going to give. You can imagine what he looks like. Very good. And give me a few moments as I look through a few more of these wonderful questions. Very good. Here's an interesting question, actually. It's a very practical question, and it's from Vedic Heartland. And it is, Dear Acharyaji, first of all, I love the new background. Well, thank you. These are our murtis. You know, very often you'll see me from a different perspective in our temple when I have the parampara behind me. I'll have the various gurus behind me. So we simply shifted everything just for today at least, so that instead now you are seeing the murtis. What is behind me, who are behind me, is precisely Sriman Narayana. When we use the term Sriman Narayana, the beings who you're seeing behind me, this is who we are referring to. This is the Supreme Godhead in murti form, obviously. So this is who's behind me. And now you ask, given the choice, is it better to work from home or to go to a workplace? Does Sanatana Dharma have a stance on this? Thank you, and Jai Sriman Narayana. Very nice. Sanatana Dharma does not have a stance on this, actually. All throughout the history of Vedic culture and civilization, you've had both. You truly have had both. You've had individuals who their home is their workplace. They could be a craftsman, they could be a brahmana, and they teach from home, etc. But then you also had individuals who went outside of the home to work as well. And as far as today in contemporary times, it really depends on the individual. Some individuals, of course, have no choice. Your job, the nature of your job is such that you can't do it from home. You have to go somewhere. If you're a construction worker, you can't do that from your living room, for example. But if you're doing IT, for example, very often you can. And yes, there's no preference one way or the other. It really depends on the nature of the job and what the person really enjoys. I know a lot of people enjoy working from home, and if that's your preference, absolutely wonderful. You know, so yeah, there is no Vedic preference. So I hope that answers the question. Very good. Ethanaphis. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but your question is, greetings Acharyaji. What are some methods we can employ to find other spiritually aware people in our local area? Very good. Good question. Well, if you're asking very specifically about the Vedic path, about Sanatana Dharma. Then, of course, I'm going to talk about our Discord server. The Discord server that we have is relatively new, actually. It wasn't founded a very long time ago. Indeed, one of the founders is actually right here in the temple room with me, actually, Krishna Prasada. He's actually here with me right now, and it wasn't founded a very long time ago, and despite that fact, it's actually grown by leaps and bounds. But it is indeed a Discord server that is dedicated very specifically to Sanatana Dharma, that is the Vedic path, not other paths, A, and B, Sanatana Dharma as taught specifically by the International Sanatana Dharma Society. And what that is code word for is Sanatana Dharma understood as authentically and scripturally based as is possible. So that's what the Discord server is for. So for individuals who do indeed want to meet other individuals, either in their nation or sometimes even quite literally in their own community, who are spiritually minded people, I would suggest that they do that. I would suggest that they join the Discord server, which again is ever growing to the point where even if joining today, you don't necessarily find someone in your area who you can befriend who is spiritually minded. In time, you will, because again, it's growing by leaps and bounds. So this is why I would suggest to everyone, please join our Discord server. And I haven't seen, but I'm sure at this point people have put up the link to that. So thank you for that question. Very good. Here's an easy question to answer. King of the Forest. Namaste, Acharyaji. Do insentient objects have Atman? Absolutely not. No, indeed, this is the very definition of Atman, is that Atman and sentiency go hand in hand. There's no such thing as a sentient being who does not have Atman, and there's no such thing as an insentient object that has Atman. If something is sentient, it is sentient for one reason and only one reason, and that is because Atman is present within it. And then when you're speaking of an object that is insentient, it is insentient for one and only one reason, and that is there is no Atman present within it. Rather, it is of the nature, both in form and in essence, of pure Prakriti, pure materiality, informed, that is rupam, informed as its particular shape, size, etc., and thus identifiable, and then afterwards given nama, given name. So that's the difference between something sentient and something insentient. So I hope that answers the question. If you want to look more into the explanation of this, indeed, we have many, many videos that go much, much deeper into what is the nature of consciousness versus that which is not conscious. You can also read certainly the totality of Bhagavad Gita, but especially second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where it goes very, very in-depth into what is the nature of that which is consciousness versus not. So again, this is a let's say a philosophical subset of yogic and Vedantic philosophy that's been extremely well developed in Sanatana Dharma. So I hope that answers the question. With that, I'm looking at the time, and I see that we only have 1 minute left. So very sadly, I'm going to have to stop here as far as questions and answers. And I know that there are many, many other questions that we just ran out of time and we did not have time to look at. And for that, I apologize if you asked a wonderful question, and again, I just didn't have time to look at it or certainly answer it. But again, this is why we do this every Monday. So even if I didn't see your question this Monday, please come back. Please come back next Monday. Try to answer your question again, and hopefully at that time, maybe I'll see it and I will have an opportunity to answer. So with that, again, as always, I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank all of you, the audience, all of you as individuals, for choosing to be here. You know, you could have done so many other things with this 1 hour of time. There's so many things in your life you could have done, but you chose to be here. You chose to hear a philosophical discussion on Sanatana Dharma. And for that, I thank you very much. I hope that you will take this knowledge and apply it to your life. and derive benefit in that way. Also, and I never do this enough, and I apologize for doing this, I want to thank the moderators. We have the most expert and the most skilled moderators, I would like to say, on the planet. And I don't say that lightly. We have absolutely wonderful moderators, and they do wonderful work behind the scenes. And as I say sometimes, there are actually more moderators than you know, not just the people you see. Yes, as an organization, we know what we're doing, and our moderators are excellent. So I want to thank our moderators for all of their wonderful work behind the scenes. And again, please join us again next Monday. Just to remind you once again, before I leave you, please visit Dharma Central when you have a chance. And when you're there, please look at all of the many books that we have available. Look at our beautiful Mantra Meditations album that is available. Please consider becoming a monthly tithing member of the ISDS. When you do so, you get several exclusives actually, including the fact that, unbeknownst to most people, once a month we have a very special live stream session that is meant only for members and well-wishers of the ISDS. The public can never see this, where it's exclusively me answering questions. I don't give a talk. I just answer people's questions for at least an hour, often more than that. That's one of the nice little perks, one could say, one of the nice rewards of becoming a monthly tithing member of the ISDS. So please consider doing that. That information is available there on dharmacentral.com. And otherwise, again, I thank you for being here. Please join us again next Monday, and namaste. Jaya Shriman Narayana. Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Guru. Sanatana Dharma Jayate. Dharma Rashtra Jayate. Surya Vangsha Jayate. Victory to Sanatana Dharma. Evam Bhavatu. May it be so. And with that, everyone, between now and when we meet again, I ask you all in every way to please take very good care of yourselves.